Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cutting right into the latest from Gilroy, California, looking at their recent city council actions and the detailed staff reports.
That's right. We've sifted through the minutes, mainly from the October 20th meeting, to really get under the hood.
And our mission here is simple. We want to understand the big policy moves, the financial health, and, the real stakes involved in governing a city like Gilroy.
Exactly. We're focusing on three main things today. First, the city's finances. They're actually looking surprisingly strong based on the early FY25 numbers.
Okay.
Second, some major infrastructure decisions, think construction, environmental rules, big-ticket items.
Right.
And third, probably the most debated topic,
Yeah.
electronic billboards. It's a proposal that just won't go away.
Ah, yes, the billboards. Okay, let's start with the money then. The good news. That preliminary report for fiscal year 2025 on the general fund. Where does Gilroy stand financially?
Well, they're standing very strong. The general fund wrapped up the year with an ending balance of $30.4 million.
Wow, okay. $30.4 million. How does that stack up against their requirements?
That's the key part. The council has a policy requiring a minimum reserve of 30% of annual expenditures. That's about $22.5 million.
So they're well above that.
Oh, yeah, significantly above. They landed at roughly 40% of expenditures. That's almost $8 million more in the bank than their own policy demands. A very healthy cushion.
That's a substantial buffer. Speaks to some serious financial discipline. But, even with a surplus overall, there are always some areas that go over budget, right? Where did the variances pop up this year?
You're right, it wasn't all underspending. While the total net savings hit about $1.3 million for the general fund, some departments did run over.
Which ones?
Notably, administration, fire, and the sort of catch-all other general government functions.
Okay, what drove the administration overrun?
A couple things there. Higher legal costs, partly tied to that whole city council districting effort they went through, which was complex. And also, changes related to city council compensation factored in.
And the fire department. I noticed a mention of strike team costs. If those teams deploy outside Gilroy, shouldn't that money come back? Why would that show up as an overrun?
That's a really good point, and it gets into the weeds of budget tracking a bit. You're right, those costs are reimbursable by the state or federal government eventually.
Right.
But the city has to pay those costs up front. So during the fiscal year, it shows up as an expense exceeding their budgeted amount for that specific period. It's a cash flow thing initially.
Okay, so it's a temporary hit on the books, even if the money comes back later. Got it.
Exactly. So the fact they still had a $1.3 million net saving overall, even carrying those temporary outlays, is actually quite impressive.
It really is. Now, there was one specific financial detail that caught my eye, a write-off of about $241,000. What was that about? Seems like a story there.
There definitely is. That $241,000 was an interfund loan. Basically, years ago, the general fund lent money to a special parking management fund. The idea was to use that money to start up a new downtown parking enforcement program. This came out of a parking study they'd done previously.
Makes sense. So what happened?
Well, after setting up the fund and making the loan, staff later decided the whole enforcement program wasn't actually needed.
Oh, so the program never launched.
Never launched. And because it never launched, the parking fund never generated the revenue it was supposed to use to pay back that loan from the general fund.
Ouch. So the general fund just had to eat the loss.
Pretty much. They finally had to acknowledge that the seed money wasn't coming back and formally write off the loan. A costly lesson in, sometimes plans change.
A very expensive lesson about seed funding, yeah. Okay, so moving from past hiccups to future planning, with this big surplus, the conversation naturally shifted to reserves, right? What's the plan for saving this extra cash?
It did. The immediate remaining surplus, after all the accounting adjustments, was about $310,000. The council discussion turned to, okay, how do we make sure we're saving consistently for the future?
Not just like deciding where a surplus goes each year.
Exactly. They moved beyond just thinking about specific needs, like parks funding, which had been discussed. They directed staff to come back with a much broader capital infrastructure reserve policy.
A formal policy. Interesting. What kind of structure are they leaning towards for that?
They seemed keen on modeling it after something they already do for their pension and OPEB trusts. OPEB, that's other post-employment benefits, mainly retiree healthcare costs.
Right, so what does that model look like?
The idea is setting aside a fixed percentage of discretionary savings each year, automatically, for capital infrastructure needs.
So it becomes mandatory, built into the budget process, rather than an annual debate.
Precisely. Take some of the politics out of it, maybe. They basically told staff, figure out the details, look at percentages, and report back in early 2026 with a solid proposal.
That sounds like a significant step toward locking in long-term financial stability. Okay, let's shift gears from the money planning to the physical stuff. Infrastructure and regulations. Where's that surplus money actually going right now?
Well, a good chunk is going right into the ground, literally. They just approved a pretty massive contract for sidewalk replacement.
How massive?
The construction contract awarded to McKim Corporation is just over $1 million, $1,009,759 to be exact. Plus, there's a contingency fund of about $100,000 on top of that.
Wow, so over $1.1 million total commitment just for sidewalks.
Yeah, they're using some funds that were underspent on capital projects last year and reappropriated. But it's a big, visible investment in basic infrastructure.
Absolutely. People notice sidewalks. Now, at the same time, they're dealing with environmental rules. This is interesting because Gilroy just brought its environmental services division in-house this past summer, ending that arrangement with Morgan Hill.
Right, that transition happened June 30th, 2025. And now they're facing a major state mandate, the statewide trash provisions.
Okay, what does that require them to do?
In simple terms, they have to stop trash from flowing into waterways from their storm drain system.
Yeah.
The specific target is to eliminate trash discharge from 30% of what are called priority land use areas.
And there's a deadline.
A fairly tight one, December 2nd, 2026. So not a lot of time.
How are they planning to meet that?
They've decided to go with what's called Track 1 compliance. This means installing actual physical devices, certified full capture systems in the storm drains.
Can you explain that a bit? What are these systems, like screens or something?
Essentially, yeah. Think of them as specially designed screens, baskets, or filters installed inside the storm drain inlets on the street. Their job is just to physically catch trash bottles, wrappers, that sort of thing, before the rainwater washes it further into the system and out to creeks or rivers.
Okay. And what's the plan? How many, how much?
The recommendation was to install about 75 of these smaller trash capture devices across the targeted areas. The estimated cost is around $200,000, which covers the devices themselves, installation, and the first couple of years of maintenance.
Now, I saw they also looked at an alternative, Track 2, something about full capture equivalency. Why didn't they go that route? It sounded like the consultant cost was maybe only a little bit more than the Track 1 hardware.
Good question. Track 2 is more about programs and policies like enhanced street sweeping or other measures that add up to the equivalent of physically capturing the trash. But there are a couple of big catches.
Like what?
First, developing that kind of program is complex and would require hiring consultants, estimated at, maybe $200,000 to $250,000 just for the planning and justification.
Okay, so similar initial cost.
Similar costs, but, and this is the big one, a Track 2 program needs specific approval from the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Regulatory hurdles.
Big ones. There's no guarantee the board would approve their plan, especially before that 2026 deadline. Staff basically said, look, Track 1 uses pre-certified hardware. We buy it, we install it, we're done. It's certain.
So certainty versus regulatory risk with a deadline looming.
Exactly. They opted for the sure thing, the $200,000 physical solution, rather than risking a potentially more expensive and uncertain regulatory process that might not even meet the deadline. Makes sense when compliance is the main goal.
Efficiency and certainty win the day there. Okay, let's pivot now to the item that probably generated the most heat. Those electronic billboards along Highway 101. This feels like a recurring battle over the city's image.
It really is. It's become a sort of signature debate in Gilroy. And the crucial background here is that the city's current rules strictly prohibit any off-site advertising, meaning billboards, for businesses not located right there.
And they specifically ban electronic signs too, right? Moving text, scrolling images.
Correct. Any kind of flashing, scrolling, or moving illumination is banned. So this proposal for electronic billboards requires a major change to their zoning ordinance.
And this isn't the first time this exact proposal has come up, is it?
Not at all. The specific language in the zoning ordinance text amendment proposal, Z25-01, was identical word for word to what the council already considered and rejected back in March 2023.
Wow. They voted it down 4-3 then, and the applicant brought back the exact same thing.
The exact same thing. It shows you the persistence probably driven by the potential economics for the sign company, MZ Properties in this case.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts of what they were proposing. What were the specifics in that draft ordinance language? Size, number, operation.
All right, so the proposal laid out some clear limits. First, a maximum of only 2 electronic billboards would be permitted in the entire city.
Only 2. Where?
along the 101 corridor, and they had to be separated by a minimum distance of 1.5 miles.
Okay. And how big are we talking?
Big. The maximum height proposed was 75 feet.
75 feet. That's tall. What about the screen itself, the digital part?
The maximum digital display area was set at 672 square feet. That matches the common industry standard size, which is typically 48 feet wide by 14 feet high.
Huge. And how would they operate? Were they proposing flashing ads or video?
No, that was a key point to address safety concerns. The proposal specified static images only. Each side of the billboard would run a loop of up to 8 different advertisements.
Okay.
Each static ad would have to display for a minimum of 8 seconds before it instantly transitioned to the next static image. No fades, no animation, just a sequence of still pictures.
And I think I saw something about public service announcements.
Yes, that was part of the pitch. The signs would have to be connected to emergency networks to display things like Amber Alerts or, maybe information about major local events free of charge.
Right. So the debate always comes down to the money versus the look and feel of the city. What were the main arguments this time?
You nailed it. Proponents hammered the financial benefits, potential revenue for the city, cited as maybe up to $100,000 a year per sign, plus that free PSA capability.
And the opposition.
Focused heavily on aesthetics, visual clutter, basically turning the 101 corridor into something less scenic and light pollution concerns.
Did the city staff look into the light pollution issue? Especially with Lick Observatory relatively nearby?
They did, and this was fascinating. Staff analysis included specific calculations. The proposed ordinance language required that the light from the signs couldn't exceed 0.3 foot candles above the existing ambient light level when measured at a distance of 250 feet.
Okay. What does that mean practically?
Practically, staff concluded that level of brightness, especially being 25 miles away and with hills in between, would have absolutely no impact on the astronomical work being done at Lake Observatory. So they directly addressed and effectively neutralized that specific concern.
Interesting. So the observatory wasn't an issue, but the bigger policy fight seems to be about that off-site advertising part, right? Allowing ads for businesses maybe not even in Gilroy.
That is the absolute core of the policy conflict here. Allowing off-site signs fundamentally changes the city's advertising landscape. It means these massive, highly visible billboards could advertise national chains, businesses in San Jose or Morgan Hill, anyone who wants to pay.
Competing directly with local Gilroy businesses.
That was precisely the argument opponents made. Why should Gilroy allow its prime freeway visibility to be used, potentially, to draw customers away from local shops and restaurants, all for maybe $100,000 a year in city revenue? It pits potential city income against protecting the local economic base.
A classic local government dilemma. So after all this debate, strong opinions on both sides again, did they finally make a decision, settle it one way or the other?
Nope. They kicked the can down the road again.
Deferred. Why this time?
The majority of the council favored waiting. They gave a couple of reasons. First, they want to wait until the city's new economic development director is hired and on the job. They want that person's expert analysis on the true economic impacts, both positive and negative.
Okay, that makes sense. Get expert input. What was the other reason?
They also asked staff to go back and research examples of smaller electronic signs in cities similar to Gilroy. This signals they might not be comfortable with that huge 75-foot-tall, 672-square-foot industry standard size. They want to see if other options exist.
So the billboard saga continues. No final answer yet.
Not yet. The delay itself really underlines that figuring out the visual character, the identity of that Highway 101 corridor is a major policy question for Gilroy.
It really sums up the meeting, doesn't it? You have the city being financially prudent, socking away money, making big investments in basics like sidewalks for over $1.1 million, dealing with environmental mandates like the $200,000 trash capture systems.
Practical, necessary stuff.
Right. But then you have this lingering, almost philosophical debate about billboards, which is all about the city's future look and feel and its economic development strategy.
Exactly. And that $30.4 million fund balance shows they can afford to tackle big needs. But this move towards formalizing savings with that new capital infrastructure reserve policy is key.
Which leads us perfectly into our final thought for you to consider. By creating this mandatory savings framework, locking in a set percentage of funds for infrastructure each year, how might that change future debates? Will this new fiscal discipline make it easier for a future council to say no to high revenue but controversial projects like billboards because the basic needs are already funded? Or could it make it harder because the mandatory savings limit funds available for other priorities?
That new reserve policy could really shape how Gilroy makes these tough choices for years to come. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out next time the billboard issue inevitably returns.
Something to definitely keep an eye on. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.